A life-saving incident in Shunmei Cave in Thailand that shocked the world occurred. 13 boys went into a cave that was 8 kilometers deep to explore. But as soon as they entered, there was a heavy rainstorm outside that had not happened in a century, and the heavy rain caused flooding. In the blink of an eye, the cave, which is several kilometers long, was blocked from the sun and flooded. By the time the children reacted, it was already too late. These boys were members of the youth football team. The youngest was only 11 years old and the oldest was only 16 years old. That afternoon, they followed the 25. When Xiaolian was 20 years old, he planned to go on a cave exploration to celebrate the birthday of his teammates. Unexpectedly, he was trapped and died in the cave. It was not until the parents who were preparing for the birthday party in the evening received no news from their children that they realized that something had happened. When I arrived at the Sleeping Beauty cave during heavy rain, I only saw 13's bicycle and the flooded cave entrance. The parents quickly called the police chief and received the news. A poster commando team was immediately dispatched to the rescue. A cave explorer who lived nearby provided a structural diagram of the cave. The total length of the cave is nearly 10,000 meters. The conditions inside the cave are complex, and the passages are extremely narrow. Fortunately, there are some relatively large caves inside that can accommodate children. But it is the rainy season now, and if people are not rescued as soon as possible, the entire cave will be flooded in a few days. By then, the 13 boy will undoubtedly die. Time was running out. The commandos put on their diving suits and immediately launched a rescue operation. However, as soon as they entered the cave entrance, the water was below their knees. As they walked forward, the water reached their necks soon until the 3 cave passage, which was 800 meters away from the cave entrance, was completely submerged in water. The only way to go further is to dive. The team members tied a rope under the water and grabbed the rope and moved forward slowly. However, there was a lot of sediment in the water, and the visibility was extremely low. In addition, the passage was narrow and the terrain was complex, even with the headlights on to explore the way. It is still difficult to move even an inch. After calming everyone down, they said that the SEALs would be able to bring the children back safely in just one night. However, a full 4 hours had passed, and the commandos had only reached 16,000 meters. The oxygen was about to run out. They had no choice but to be forced. One of the team members returned and almost died in the cave because of the wound caused by the curse. Seeing this scene, all the parents fell into deep despair. The husband finally realized how difficult the rescue was this time. The next morning, the husband dropped his count. 10 high-power water pumps tried to drain the water in the cave. However, the rain became heavier and heavier. This was only a drop in the bucket. After investigation, a water conservancy engineer discovered the source of the problem. It turned out that the water in the cave flowed into the cave through gaps in the mountains like this. There are countless death irrigation caves on the mountain. The only solution is to divert some of the rainwater to other places to reduce the water level in the caves. But the only place that can hold so much water is the farmland at the foot of the mountain. This also means that the entire harvest of these farmers will be destroyed. But when the villagers learned that this was done to save their children, they all nodded without hesitation. Agree. Okay, arrive. In this way, the rain on the mountain is directed to this piece of farmland. However, this can only temporarily alleviate the problem of water accumulation in the cave. If the rain doesn't stop, the water in the cave will never be drained out. The rainy season in Thailand lasts for 4 to 5 months, which also means that search and rescue operations are imminent. At this time, the news hit the headlines. 13 trapped teenagers touched the hearts of the entire Thai people. Everyone was waiting for a miracle to happen. However, the rescue team. After searching for 2 full days, there was still no news. They did not know where the children were trapped, let alone whether they were dead or alive. They had no choice but to search and rescue them. On the 4th day, Thailand issued an international rescue request to the world. At once, China, the United States, Britain, and 17 countries have joined the rescue operation, and more than 5,000 of volunteers around the world have arrived in Thailand immediately. Among them are doctors, chefs, workers, some responsible for pumping water, some responsible for digging holes. Asking for rewards, they all participated in the search and rescue. On the 5th day, 2 diving rescue experts from the UK, Rick and John, also arrived in Thailand. They did not dare to delay when they got off the car, put on their diving suits, and went straight to the sea. They planned to dive into the cave entrance from here. The 2 of them had 30 years of agricultural diving experience, but they were shocked when they went down. The situation in the cave was very dangerous. The sharp rocks and undercurrents mixed with mud and rocks could kill people if they were not careful. The passages in the cave were very dangerous. It was so small that they could only groping forward little by little, following the sound of the first shadow left by the rescue team. 4 hours later, they arrived at the trapezoidal intersection 16,000 meters away from the entrance of the cave. This was the furthest distance the rescue team could dive into, and then there was a vast area below. Unknown, they took a short rest and were about to continue moving forward. Unexpectedly, the current in the Sichuan River broke down the human body. The flying rocks were swept up by the current and rushed towards the 2 of them. Fortunately, they barely escaped with their rich experience and could not go any further. The 2 immediately decided to return the same way. But just 10 meters away from the number 3 hole, they found a volunteer repairing a water pump due to the sudden rise in the water. He was trapped here because of the water level. Rick could only give him John's diving equipment, send him out, and then come back to pick up John. However, for an ordinary person who had never dived before, diving in such an environment would cause the fear of death, The turbid water quality, the dark caves, and the rapid water flow all stimulated the volunteer's nerves. He suddenly felt a suffocation, and his body struggled uncontrollably. He instinctively swam towards the water but was hit by a rock wall and passed out with a broken head and bleeding. Rick hurriedly stepped forward to store oxygen for him, then grabbed him and continued moving forward. Unexpectedly, when the volunteer woke up, he broke free again. Fortunately, in front of him was cave number 3. In this way, he saved his life. In just 10 minutes, Rick was exhausted. He returned to the place where he had just returned and successfully picked up John. However, the first search and rescue operation of the two ended in failure. The time came to the third cave. In 7 days, the parents have gone from despair to starry-eyed. Because the assistant chief was found nearby, he only prayed to find the body of the child. The assistant chief held a meeting to discuss the next rescue operation. The farthest distance the rescue team has reached is 16 meters. No trace of the children was found along the way at the trapezoidal intersection, which meant that they were in a deeper place. Rick and John applied to go down into the cave again, but were rejected by the assistant chief. The heavy rain continued to fall, and the water level in the cave continued to rise. The water flow is getting faster and faster, and it is too risky to go down now. The commander decided to wait until the rain stops before continuing the rescue. On the 9th day, the heavy rain that lasted for 8 days and nights finally stopped. After 24 hours of pumping, the water level in the cave finally dropped. On the 10th day, the rescue operation was launched again. Rick and John wore good equipment as pioneers and dived into the cave again. This time, it only took them 3 hours to arrive. At the trapezoidal intersection, Rick took out a blue traction rope and connected it to the end of the red rope. He continued to fumble forward, and the hole became narrower and narrower. Fortunately, the water flow could not reach them. They dug through the rocks, blocking the passage while looking for traces of the children. At this time, the two of them had only one idea, which was to find the body. In their opinion, it was impossible for the children to survive after so many days. More than 3 hours passed. The two successfully traveled 900 meters and arrived at the 9 cave. Suddenly, Rick smelled a stinging smell. He thought it was a rotting corpse. Unexpectedly, a few gleams of light suddenly shot out from the dark cave, leaving 13 children behind after 10 days. After waiting for a long time, they finally found this group of children. 13 teenagers were all alive. Rick and John were so shocked that it was hard to imagine how they survived. It turned out that the children had some snacks with them when they entered the cave. The coach distributed these snacks uniformly, and then they were not allowed to drink the standing water on the ground, only the mountain spring that seeped in from the salt cracks. Finally, he asked them to meditate to reduce the loss of physical strength. In this way, they were satisfied. It lasted 10 days. Apart from being starved to skin and bones, the children had no mental problems at all. This was a miracle because they didn't bring any food with them. Rick and John could only comfort the children and then brought back the good news that the 13 people were alive. However, Rick was worried and asked them not to spread the news yet. But when they saw the video of the children alive, everyone was so excited that they couldn't stop it, and it spread immediately. The parents were happy, and everyone was cheering. Call them heroes as if the rescue has been successful. Rick and John had already won the victory, but they were faced with death. They knew that the biggest difficulty was not to find the children, but how to successfully rescue them from this deep cave. Rick issued a standard and angrily shouted at everyone, "So what if they were found? It's not that I want to watch them die, but the 9 cave where the children are trapped is 25 meters away from the cave entrance. Even a diving expert like Rick would take 6 hours to swim the entire distance." The chief said that they had the best divers and would be able to bring the children out safely, but the key to the problem was not the divers, but the children. Just a few days ago, Rick took an adult volunteer to dive for more than 10 meters, but in the dark water channel, the adult couldn't survive for 3 minutes. He fell into panic and almost drowned on the spot, not to mention causing a mental breakdown for a group of people who had been hungry for 10 days. After 6 hours of diving, the child was dead. Nothing happened. In fact, everyone tried other rescue methods in the past few days. They first pumped out water, but after pumping more than 100,000 liters, the water level only dropped by 1 centimeter. Drilling holes from the outside is even more risky. If it collapses, the consequences will be disastrous. Now, even diving is a dead end. For a while, everyone fell into deep despair. There was no other way. The commander could only hide the news and send a SEAL. The commando team went in to deliver some food to the children. After 7 hours of trapping, the team members followed the traction rope and finally arrived at cave number 9. They saw this group of children. They brought some food. The children unpacked and started to wolf down the food given by the team members. After checking their bodies and finding no major problems, they were preparing to evacuate. But at this time, a team member checked the oxygen tank and found that the oxygen inside was seriously insufficient. It is only enough to support one person to return, which means that everyone else has to stay in the cave. What's worse is that the oxygen content in the cave has been detected to have dropped to 16%. If rescue is not carried out as soon as possible, they will all lose their breath and pass the time. On 12 days, everyone was waiting for the handover. The chief of staff pointed out to David that the rescue plan was being set up and the children would be rescued safely soon, but he turned his head and looked solemn. There was nothing he could do now. That night, Rick thought of a crazy way. He contacted his good friend Harry. Harry is a diving enthusiast and a professional anesthetist. That's right. Rick wanted to put the children under anesthesia and put on breathing masks, and then deliver pigs to the children one by one like packages. Harry didn't even think about rejecting the amount of anesthesia on the spot. He could only use experience to proportion the amount of the anesthetic to the children. They are likely to die on the spot, but if the dosage is too small, the children, when you wake up in the middle, you will be even more panicked. The result is to investigate the reversal. But even if the risk is so high, this is the only way. On the 15th day, the commando team once again entered the cave to deliver supplies to the children, but on the way, one of the team members' oxygen bottle was stolen by Qianyi God. At this time, the team member had already gone far. He had no choice but to take off his backpack and go back to pick up the rope. However, he did not notice that the dropped air nozzle was stuck in the crack of the stone. When he untied the rope and picked up the oxygen bottle, a large amount of oxygen leaked out. Wow, the air-mouth spider leaked. He picked up a dose and took a look. He found in despair that the oxygen in the bottle had bottomed out. This was 900 meters away from the cave entrance. The remaining oxygen was not enough to support it to swim the entire distance, whether it was moving forward or backward. In the end, the mobilizer could only die in boundless despair. This incident gave everyone a heavy blow. Harry also began to waver. Since the children have no way to survive, why not try a method that still has a chance of survival? He said, I can prepare an anesthetic medicine that only lasts half an hour at a time, but it takes at least 5 to 6 hours to travel from the 9 cave to the cave entrance, which means that I have to inject anesthesia multiple times along the way to ensure that the children will not wake up. This is a problem for all divers. It was a great test. The captain heard about this plan and asked what the risks were. Harry said he didn't know because he had never done it before. In the end, the minister said that the minister agreed to the rescue plan, but it must be carried out secretly. The husband also stood up and said that all the responsibilities would be borne by him alone. On the 16th day, the people at the scene were expelled. Ali trained the divers on the method of anesthesia injection and precautions. People sneaked into the cave and started the rescue operation. The words were like this. They planned to use a relay method to rescue the children one by one. Every time they arrived in a cave, they would be kept here and given oxygen to prevent accidents. 6 hours later, the rescuers finally arrived. When we entered cave number 9, we saw that the children were very excited about their arrival. Soon the first child put on a diving suit. The doctor gave him a medicine, told him stories to relax his body, and injected him with anesthesia until the child was fully recovered. After he lost consciousness, put on an oxygen mask, then turned the person over and slowly sank into the water to make sure he could breathe normally underwater, and then removed his hands. The feet are tied tightly to prevent the child from drowning if he wakes up and struggles in the middle. When everything is fine, the former sailor takes the child out along the shadow rope and swims out. He must pay close attention and check at all times. In the case of the child, one is to confirm breathing, and the other is to see if the anesthetic has expired. Once there are signs of awakening from the drug, one must immediately surface and refill the anesthesia. However, it may be because of nervousness that the anesthesia was pressed urgently and the hand fell into the turbid water, inside. Seeing the child struggling to wake up, at the critical moment, the divers kept groping at the bottom of the water and finally picked up a medicine and successfully injected it. In this way, after more than 3 hours of journey, the first child successfully arrived in cave number 5. The people in the cave had been waiting for a long time. They quickly picked up the child and confirmed the vital signs. After that, they were carried on ropes and carried the child one by one with sticks. Delivery. Are these people in the tunnel here? Volunteers from all over the world saw the boy who was still alive. Each of them felt extremely moved and proud. After 2 hours of transportation from place to place, the first child was finally carried out of the cave alive. This most difficult rescue operation in history was finally off to a good start. Successful experience was gained soon. The second, however, third, and he was rescued all safe. This rescue took 20 hours and 4 children were safely rescued. Everyone was shouting, but they didn't know how much pressure the heroes involved in the rescue had endured. Physical exertion is on the one hand, and the scariest thing is the psychological pressure. If they succeed, they are the heroes who save people. Once a child dies, they are the real murderers, so Rick and his team can only be careful and careful again. The time has come to the 17th day, and the weather forecast says that it will be soon. It was going to rain heavily again. The central government could only seize the time to save a few more people. With their tacit cooperation, they successfully rescued 5 children this time. However, the good times did not last long. That night, the heavy rain came as expected, and the rain passed. The anger caused all the rainwater to seep into the hole through the gaps. The children looked helplessly at the water level and felt uneasy. Volunteers cut bamboos overnight, and this layer of pipes diverted the rainwater from the mountain to other places. On the morning of the 18th day, the last rescue was carried out. This time, they not only had to take care of the anesthetized children, but also had to deal with the turbulent water and high-speed flowing gravel and sand. The operation became extremely difficult. Someone was accidentally swept away by the current. Fortunately, he grabbed the wire in time and saved his life. They can take care of the children more carefully and move forward a little bit. No one knows how difficult every move they make in this harsh environment. Fortunately, with strong will and tacit cooperation, the coaches of the remaining 3 children are finally able to make progress. The 13 boys who had been missing since then were sent to the cave entrance and were rescued safely. Everyone cried with joy when they heard the news. This is a real incident and a rescue event in history. The miracle lasted for 18 days and affected 17 countries and regions. 5,000 of volunteers participated. 13 teenagers were all safely rescued with a survival rate of less than 10%. It is said that the entire Shunmei man cave was completely flooded shortly after they came out of the cave. The submergence lasted for 8 months. It is hard to imagine what would have happened to the 13 teenagers without this rescue. The miracle could not have happened without the efforts of everyone. Everyone who participated directly or indirectly in the rescue was a hero. The farmers whose crops were submerged in the water were compensated afterwards. Of course, as we cheer for the miracle, please don't forget the heroes who sacrificed their lives. They are SEAL Sharman Kunanen, who unfortunately drowned while delivering supplies, and the Navy SEAL who drowned while rescuing others. Petty Officer Beirut Park Bala, who died of blood infection during the process, paid tribute to them.